Welcome to Berkshire Now News Magazine, where we explore news and views from around the Berkshires. The coronavirus pandemic and the associated quarantine affects each of us differently. Some get depressed, some get panic-stricken, some get busy doing things that they have been putting off. Some get creative, but what if you are already creative and then thrust into this new situation? How is your creativity being changed? This week, we will look at how a few local artists are coping with this new reality. First up is Marge Bride, a well-known local professional artist and instructor. After Marge, we talk with Mark Mellinger, who has always been an impressionist, and how his painting has been influenced by the pandemic. Lastly, we talk with Ed Bride of Berkshire Jazz. Marge Bride has been our artist for more than 30 years, and she's not only a professional artist, but she is also a instructor on how to paint, and she's here with us today to talk about what's going on with her life now that she's in quarantine. Can you tell us a little bit about what's that done to your artistic instincts?
And I sure can. When I realized that the first thing was I had to cancel all of my lessons. I was starting with 8 new students in March, and that immediately fell apart, so I had to cancel that. I still had a few commissions I was working on, so I could get those done, but then I thought, what's next? It's hard to do shows. All of the shows that were scheduled were in the process of being canceled. I wasn't quite sure what to do. Everything was doom and gloom, of course, but then again, we didn't know it was going to last more than a month to 6 weeks. So we thought, okay, we can put up with this for a little while. It's kind of nice to have a few weeks dedicated to cleaning the house, washing the blinds, doing all those things we've been putting off forever. But then when I finished all that, I said, all right, this is my livelihood, and I need to figure out what to do to still earn some money. So I got thinking, and I knew that people weren't interested in any serious art projects at this point. I wouldn't have been. You're just worried about surviving and keeping things together. So I thought, well, what do we love not more than, but as much as our other family members? And that's our pets. And I thought, well, why don't I paint dogs? I never have before. Painting animals was completely new to me. And I thought, okay, I've attempted to teach people how to paint the fur on animals and the eyes and things, but I never really tackled painting whole animals as little mini portraits. So I thought, well, let's try this out. I tried it out on a couple of nieces who had some good-looking puppies there, and it was so much fun. So they helped me put together a little package. We call it Naked Puppies, and the only reason it's called Naked Puppies is because I love seeing a dog without a collar, without a scarf, without the silly vests and things that you put on dogs to make them look human. So I said, I'm just going to paint dogs completely naked, no collar, no anything. So that's what I did. I started with about 3. I think I've painted about 12 by now. So it's fun. People love it. It's inexpensive. I asked people to send me the best picture of their pet that they have in the pose that they like. I study it, I draw it, and then I paint the pet. And if I don't have a good look at that animal, if it's a specific breed, I might go online and study the animal structure at that point. But then I'll draw it and I'll paint it and give it a very simple background. And that's how Naked Puppies got started. And I've done about 10 or 12 of them at this point, and people love them. They're kind of small. They go out, they're already matted in a standard size, and it's great for Mother's Day and Father's Day, and inexpensive and fun. It's fun for me, and it's fun for people who want something a little different and love their pets.
And it gives them something to look forward to.
Well, it really does. And it takes me about a week once I get the picture takes me about a week to do the drawing and do the painting. So it's a quick process. It's not like I'm painting a large painting with many different layers and everything. That takes many weeks, but this is simple. It's really kind of fun. It's fun for me.
I'm assuming you do it in acrylics?
No, this is all watercolor. I only
it's
paint
watercolor.
only paint watercolor.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
I gave up oils and acrylic. Well, actually, I never painted very much in acrylics. A couple of projects here and there, but no, for the most part, after I finished school, I gave up oils, took on watercolors. It was going to be between printmaking and watercolors because I love them both so much. And I said, no, I'm going to focus on watercolors. So I have, and I've painted hundreds and hundreds of watercolors now. And I paint a lot of house portraits. I've probably painted close to 200 house portraits at this point.
Wow.
In town scenes, because I love buildings. Of all the crazy things, I love painting windows, doors, all those crazy little details. That is something that I like to do. Landscapes I like, not nearly as much as buildings, but yeah, that's what I've been doing. So, and I usually use Facebook once a week on Facebook on my art side of Facebook because I have a professional watercolor page. That's where I'll put out like a little album. Like this week, we're going to go on a tour of this past weekend. It was, I put it out on a Sunday usually. And I said, well, it's such beautiful weather this weekend. I'm thinking, why don't we focus on some water scenes? So I put maybe 15 paintings of water I've done. And it's not a selling show or anything. It's just, this is what I do, and I'm just going to share my paintings with everybody who wants to look at them. So it's fun. I've done buildings, I've done European scenes, and just the Berkshires. And the whole idea is, can you guess where this is? And I will, after a few days, I will identify it, but it's fun. But between that, and between the puppies, and it's still a couple of commissions here and there. This is a good time to have a commission done because I'm here and all I'm doing is painting.
Right.
But I would say it's fun. I'm keeping busy. I wish I wasn't kind of confined to my studio so much because I would rather go out and be out in the world a little bit more. But I find, you may find yourself as you talk to other artists, that we're kind of loners anyway, and we work alone. I don't paint with other people. I only paint with myself. And I started teaching a few years ago because I thought, well, it's time I started associating with other people. So that's what I've been doing. The shows, all the exhibits, just about everything from now through the end of the summer have been canceled. So that impacts the way a lot of artists are working right now. Normally, this would be a very, very busy time for us. We would be painting everything to get ready for exhibits. But, without any exhibits coming up, I find I'm looking for other things. I'm just not painting on spec just for the fun of it. I'm painting, real projects. So it's tough, but I don't think we have the toughest time of it. When we're painting, it's still greatly satisfying.
I know exactly what you mean. Well, Marge, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
It's good to hear that you're surviving and almost thriving with your artistic endeavors. Thank you so much.
Yeah, in my basement. Thank you very much. Bye now.
Bye-bye. Mark Mellinger, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
We understand that you're an artist, you're a painter. What is the medium that you paint in? Is it acrylic or oils or?
It's acrylic. I started using acrylic. I was working at home and my wife objected to the smell of oil, so I started working in acrylic. And I find it just as good, honestly, even better in some ways.
Certainly dries faster.
it dries faster, so you can, say, well, I don't like what I did there, and try something else and save the good parts and paint over the bad parts, and you can work at a decent clip. So
Right.
that's nice. I do some construction too, with kind of found objects construction. Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we're investigating is the effect that the coronavirus pandemic is having on the artistic sensibilities of artists such as yourself. What, if anything, has it affected you? How has it affected you? And are you doing things differently now, just based on the way you feel and are reacting, or are you pretty much doing the same thing?
I've drifted back. I was working mainly in an abstract style for quite a few years. Before that, I'd worked in my youth in a more kind of expressionist style. And since the pandemic started, I've found myself wanting to gravitate back to realism, not strict realism, but representational painting, which depicts something recognizable from real life. I think that's
right.
In part because you're like everybody else. I'm so focused on real life and trying to figure out what exactly is going on and what's real and what's rumor and misunderstanding.
Right. So if we look at the painting that you entitled, I believe, The Three Patriarchs, is that fairly representative of your impressionist approach to art?
That's about a year old, maybe a little more than a year. It's a 3-panel triptych, that was pretty much how I was working for the last couple of years. It's got a kind of an upbeat quality, I think, with fairly bright colors, kind of a light washes and things like that I guess reflected a mood prior to the current mood that everyone's in.
Right.
Which is certainly more sober, thoughtful, worried, concerned, uncertain about the future. So, in some ways, my painting has gotten darker in color and in tone, kind of represent how me and everyone else is feeling.
Right. Now, the painting you call Pandemic, is that emblematic of what you were just saying?
Yeah, exactly. That's the first one in which I set out to try to deal directly and intentionally with the pandemic, and I got to it browsing through an old German book on that's centered around the 1918 Spanish flu, which was a horrendous experience for everyone, and was certainly reflected in the art of its time. So I took this from an old photograph from 1918 of kind of an army of scientists that were trying to find cures, preventions for what was going on around them. Seemed kind of appropriate to the time, and I did it mainly in gray tones to reflect the mood.
Sure. And then there's another one that I forget the title of it, but it looks like a spaceman. He's wearing a space helmet. What was the title of that one?
That's a really odd one. I call it In Accordance. It's based around a print that I bought at an estate sale in the Berkshires, and it's a funny lithograph that somebody had signed his own name on. So it's at first I called it the twice stolen image, but so it's sort of a counterfeit art print that I then used collage to kind of absurdify. The helmet is actually a deep sea diver's helmet from back in the 40s, when divers went down in these massive contraptions with hoses connecting them to the surface. And there's something about the somber figure, and I wish I knew who it was. The original print was a portrait of, but it's I think it's actually an older woman with a big Bible-looking tome in front of her. So that was my inspiration. I like picking up found objects, found pieces of images, and working with those.
I see. And then the final piece, you started working on that, as I remember, before the pandemic, and then you kind of changed your approach to what you wanted to illustrate there. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a painting that's, a lot of times I'll have paintings kind of sitting around. I get to a point where I don't know quite what to do with them, and I'll just put them away for a while and eventually take them out and maybe have an idea or just have parts of it that I like and parts of it that I don't. So I start reworking it, and slowly an image kind of appears, and then I respond to what I've seen a hint of. So this painting has a figure in it who seems to be lost in a maelstrom. I call it sandstorm, just because of the forms and the colors. But it evolved into a masked person, kind of in a confused world that they can't make any sense of. And so that's one that didn't start out to be about this coronavirus, but wound up reflecting it in some way.
I could see that, yes. Now, you are also a psychologist, as I understand
That's right.
it. Any words of wisdom for our viewers as to how best to survive these times?
I think it's such an individual thing. Some people are totally distraught over it. Some lucky people, I guess, seem to be barely touched. They are able to survive in a kind of quarantine. So, but even for them, I think it's a very disorienting, disjointing experience. It's like we were plucked out of our life and plunked down in another world that we don't really know the rules of, and we don't know how long we're going to be here. We don't know what comes after it. So I think, as much as possible, grounding yourself in things that are familiar, that are human and based in love and appreciation. I find going for walks in the woods very restorative. Even if you have to bring a mask in case you see somebody walking the other way on the trail, that's okay. People have been, for the most part, very thoughtful about that, and it takes you back to a world where this hasn't happened. I think we need to spend some time, as much as possible. Not everybody has the opportunities to go for walks in the woods, but to do something familiar, getting together with friends, sitting on their porch 10 feet apart has been another way of coping with it. And so, you need to be fully cognizant of what's going on. You need to be up to date on the developments, but you also need to take a break and do something that's like your former life.
I agree, and I try to do that myself by hiking in the woods. I've done a lot of it this past week, and it's been great hiking. Well, Mark, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and I'm really enjoying your artwork. And
well, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure too.
Ed Bride does a lot of work with promoting jazz events around Berkshire County. Ed, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with the concerts and whatnot now that we're in this quarantine situation?
Yeah, well, just like many other organizations, we've never been faced with something like this before. The Berkshire's Jazz runs events throughout the year, basically from February through November. And so we got a couple of events in before the pandemic hit, and now our programming has been suspended basically indefinitely. And that includes the Berkshire Gateway Jazz Weekend, which takes place in mid-June in Lee. It included a special concert we had booked in April at the Berkshire Museum with a jazz flute player named Andrea Brafeld, which has been postponed now to September. We hope it takes place. We have a Berkshire Jazz Showcase scheduled for the Pittsfield Common on July 11th. As of right now, we don't know if that will take place. Later in the year, we have our flagship event, the Pittsfield City Jazz Festival, which is held at the Colonial Theater, smaller venues, and then all over town mid-October. The talent is all booked. We don't know if we're going to be able to hold it this year or not. And then another event in November at St. James Place in Great Barrington. Booked, but we don't know what the scenario is going to be. And of course, with jazz, it tends to attract an older audience. And so we are the last ones who are going to be comfortable going into large venues with large crowds. So even when the isolation mandate is lifted, we have to deal with the other aspects of the uncertainties. Will people come out and hear this music? And ideally, it'll be lifted in time to have the Berkshire Jazz Showcase as scheduled in July, which would tell us a few things. Number one is outdoors. You can socially distance put a blanket on the Pittsfield Common, but will tell us whether people are actually comfortable doing that. So hopefully it'll clear by then. I'm not betting on it though.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. So there's really not much you can do at all because you're at the mercy of the availability of these venues.
Exactly right. And we've been talking regularly with the Colonial, with the Berkshire Museum and other smaller venues where we hold these events. And anything that's a restaurant, has been shut down anyway. And we've had events at several restaurants, including Flavors, Pancho's. I could name a dozen. And so they're all shut down now anyway. So that's not our choice. But you can assume safely, I don't know, you can assume that sometime during this summer, the theatrical events, the Mahawi, the Colonial, the Berkshire Museum, will begin to reopen, even if it's with limited seating. So we are at the mercy of conditions. The good news is we have all our talent booked, and they're all being kept up to date, of course. We've had a really good fundraising year. We just don't know when we're going to be able to spend it and provide some really good, solid entertainment to the audiences.
So are people able to see any previous events that may have been recorded?
That's a really good question, and I probably should have mentioned it. Almost all of our featured concerts have been videoed and are shown at PCTV on a show we call Berkshire's Jazz Presents, 1 hour show. And so there's a really big archive there of main stage concerts, of the Berkshire Jazz Showcase, which you helped us with last year and previous years, and some of our smaller events. And they can go to PCTV, and the new app, they have PCTV Select, which is available. It's at the Roku, Apple TV, and what other platforms? And as the regular internet, you can Google it up, so to speak, and you can look at the inventory, look for Berkshire's Jazz. You can see all the events that we've presented, and we're just about ready to start reminding all of our followers through direct mail and social media that they can do this. And then I think we're going to do a pick of the week, so to speak, and promote one particular memorable concert as a way to remind people of the things that we've been doing, because, well, we've been silenced since basically the middle of March.
Right. Well, we'll certainly pass that information along in the credits to this program as well, so that people know where they can go at PCTV to see the on-demand listings.
Right.
Ed, thank you so much for your time today. We hope that you stay safe and strong during this time.
Thanks, Bruce. Nice to be with you, even if virtually.
As you can see, creativity can be influenced by our environment. I hope you have found ways to cope with being in quarantine and are able to approach it in a creative and positive way. Until next time, stay safe, strong, and be creative.